Hello everyone and welcome once again in the second day of my video lesson, The Thief Story. In this story, we shall continue with the story from where we had left in the first video. So let us begin with the text, The Thief Story. Later he patted on the head and said, "Never mind, he would teach me to cook. He also taught me to write my name and said he would soon to teach me to write whole sentences and to add numbers. I was grateful. I knew that once I could write like an educated man, there would be no limit to what I could achieve. It was quite pleasant working for Anil. I made the tea in the morning and then would take my time buying the day's supplies, usually making a profit of about a rupee a day. I think he knew I made a little money this way, but he did not seem to mind. Anil made money by fits and starts. He would borrow one week, lend the next. He kept worrying about his next check, but as soon as it arrived, he would go out and celebrate. It seems he wrote for magazines, a queer way to make a living. So later, Anil patted on Hari's head and said, "Never mind. He would teach him to cook." Anil taught him to write his name and said that he would also teach him to write complete sentences and add numbers. The latter was grateful to him. He was confident that once he was an educated person, there would be no limit to what he wished to achieve. It was quite pleasant for him to work for Anil. He made tea in the morning and would take his time buying the needed supplies. He usually made a profit of about a rupee a day. Hari thought that Anil knew about the petty theft he was into for making a little money that way, but the latter did not seem to mind and was pretty ignorant about it. Well, Anil did not have any regular income as he used to earn money by involving in diverse events. That means in many actions, many activities. Well, he had no fixed job. The narrator says that Anil was worried about his checks all the time, but as soon as he would receive a check, he would go out with his friend and celebrate. The narrator thought that he used to write for magazines, which according to him was a strange way to earn money. So now back to the text. One evening he came home with a small bundle of notes, saying he had just sold a book to a publisher. At night, I saw him tuck the money under the mattress. I had been working for Anil for almost a month and apart from cheating on the shopping, had not done anything in my line of work. I had every opportunity for doing so. Anil had given me a key to the door, and I could come and go as I pleased. He was the most trusting person I had ever met, and that is why it was so difficult to rob him. It's easy to rob a greedy man because he can afford to be robbed, but it's difficult to rob a careless man. Sometimes he doesn't even notice he's been robbed, and that takes all the pleasure out of the work. Well, it's time I did some real work, I told myself. I'm out of practice, and if I don't take the money, he'll only waste it on his friends. After all, he doesn't even pay me. So, one evening, Anil came home with some money and told Hari that he had sold a book to a publisher. While Anil had put the money under his mattress, Hari saw him. Hari thought that he had been working for Anil for almost a month and he had not swindled him other than from the 1 rupee that he used to fetch on the daily basis. The narrator also thought that he had every chance to steal Anil as he had given him the key to his room and he could come and go whenever he desired. Hari had been tremendously trusted upon by Anil. He had never been trusted upon by anyone else in his life this way. This was the only thing that was restricting him from stealing Anil, as Hari thought it is way easy to rob a greedy man because he has the capacity to get robbed, as he knows about what he loses. But for a careless man like Anil, there was no pleasure to steal as they sometimes don't even come to know that they have been robbed. Then Hari decided that he would start with his usual work. He had not robbed anyone for a long time. He also reasoned this that his act of stealing Anil's money by telling himself that if he didn't steal it, Anil would waste it on his friends. Moreover, he also thought that he had a right over the money as Anil didn't even pay for him for his work. Well, coming back to the text, Anil was asleep. A beam of moonlight stepped over the balcony and fell on the bed. I sat up on the floor considering the situation. If I took the money, I could catch the 10:30 express to Lucknow. Slipping out of the blanket, I crept up to the bed. Anil was sleeping peacefully. His face was clear and unlined. Even I had more marks on my face, though mine were mostly scars. My hand slid under the mattress, searching for the notes. When I found them, I drew them out without a sound. Anil sighed in his sleep and turned on his side towards me. I was startled and quickly crawled out of the room. When I was on the road, I began to run. I had the notes at my waist, held there by the string of my pajamas. I slowed down to a walk and counted the notes, 600 rupees in 50s. I could live like an oil rich Arab for a week or two. When I reached the station, I did not stop at the ticket office. Well, I had never bought a ticket in my life, but dashed straight to the platform. The Lucknow Express was just moving out. The train had still to pick up speed, and I should have been able to jump into one of the carriages, but I hesitated. For some reason I can't explain, and I lost the chance to get away. Well, the meaning is pretty clear. Anil was sleeping. There was a beam of moonlight over Anil's bed that was coming in from the window. Hari planned that if he took the money, he could leave the city by 10:30 p.m. Lucknow Express train. Hari then crept towards the bed and slipped his hand slowly inside the mattress. Anil, who was sleeping peacefully, was without a single line on his face, and Hari's face had so many but of scars on it. Hari then quietly took out the notes without making any sound. Anil took a breath in his sleep and turned towards the side of Hari. He directly faced Hari, which frightened him a bit, and Hari quickly left the room. As soon as Hari left the room and was on the road, he started running and kept the notes in his pajamas. He had tied it with a string of pajamas. Then, after a while, Hari slowed down and counted the notes. It was 600 rupees in 12 notes of 50 rupees each. Then Hari thought to himself that with this much money, he could live a luxurious life like an oil rich Arab for at least 2 weeks. When he reached the station, he didn't stop at the ticket office. He had never bought a ticket in his entire life. He dashed straight to the platform. The Lucknow Express had departed and was just moving out. The train had still to pick up speed, and he thought that he should have been able to jump into one of the carriages, but he hesitated. Perhaps for some reason which he felt that he couldn't explain, and himself lost the opportunity to get away. Well, coming back to the text, when the train had gone, I found myself standing alone on the deserted platform. I had no idea where to spend the night. I had no friends, believing that friends were more trouble than help, and I did not want to make anyone curious by staying at one of the small hotels near the station. The only person I knew really well was the man I had robbed. Leaving the station, I walked slowly through the bazaar. In my short career as a thief, I had made a study of men's faces when they had lost their goods. The greedy man showed fear, the rich man showed anger, the poor man showed acceptance, but I knew that Anil's face, when he discovered the theft, would show only a touch of sadness, not for the loss of money, but for the loss of trust. I found myself in the Maidan and sat down on a bench. The night was chilly. It was early November. and a light drizzle added to my discomfort. Soon it was raining quite heavily. My shirt and pajamas stuck to my skin, and a cold wind blew the rain across my face. I went back to the bazaar and sat down in the shelter of the clock tower. The clock showed midnight. I felt for the notes. They were damp from the rain. Anil's money. In the morning, he would probably have given me 2 or 3 rupees to go to the cinema. But now I had it all. I couldn't cook his meals, run to the bazaar, or learn to write whole sentences anymore. Well, here's the explanation. When the train had disappeared, he found himself standing alone and unaccompanied on the deserted platform. He had no idea where to spend the night. He had no friends. He believed that friends were more trouble than they were help. Hence, he did not want to make anyone curious by staying at one of the small hotels near the station. The only person he knew really well was Anil, the man he had robbed. He walked slowly through the bazaar coming out of the station. While in his short career as a thief, he had made a study of men's faces when they had lost their belongings. The greedy man showed fear, the rich man showed anger, the poor man showed acceptance. Then he knew that Anil's face, when he discovered the theft, would show only a touch of disappointment, not for the loss of money but for the loss of trust. He found himself in the field and sat down on a bench. The night was bitterly cold as it was early November, and a light shower added nothing but to his discomfort. Soon it began raining quite heavily. His shirt and pajamas got stuck to his skin, and a cold wind blew the rain across his face. Then he went back to the bazaar and sat down in the shelter of the clock tower. The clock showed midnight. He touched the note and felt that they were damp from the rain. He thought that in the morning he would have probably given him 2 or 3 rupees to go to the cinema. But then his thief being had them all. Then he thought that he couldn't cook Anil's meals, run to the bazaar, or learn to write whole sentences anymore. Well, now coming back to the text, I had forgotten about them in the excitement of the theft. Whole sentences, I knew, could one day bring me more than a few hundred rupees. It was a simple matter to steal, and sometimes just as simple to be caught. But to be a really big man, a clever and respected man, was something else. I should go back to Anil, I told myself, if only to learn to read and write. I hurried back to the room feeling very nervous, for it is much easier to steal something than to return it undetected. I opened the door quietly, then stood in the doorway. In clouded moonlight, Anil was still asleep. I crept to the head of the bed and my hand came up with the notes. I felt his breath on my hand. I remained still for a minute. Then my hand found the edge of the mattress and slipped under it with the notes. I awoke late next morning to find that Anil had already made the tea. He stretched out his hand towards me. There was a 50 rupee note between his fingers. My heart sank. I thought I had been discovered. I made some money yesterday, he explained. Now you will be paid regularly. My spirits rose. But when I took the note, I saw it was still wet from the night's rain. Today, we will start writing sentences, he said. He knew, but neither his lips nor his eyes showed anything. I smiled at Anil in my most appealing way, and the smile came by itself without any effort. Well, now the explanation. He had perhaps forgotten all these in the excitement of stealing the money. He knew that if he could learn to read and write, he could earn much more money than these few hundred rupees with honesty. He knew that it was a simple matter to steal, and it was just that easy to get caught as well. Had he learned to read and write, he could surely become a big and respected man one day. Hari rushed back to Anil's room and was very nervous because he knew that it was much more difficult to return stolen things without being caught than actually stealing it. Hari stood at the hallway as the moonlight was still falling over the bed. Anil was still asleep. Hari went near the head side of the bed and took out the notes. As he was about to put the notes under the mattress, his hand could feel Anil's breath on his hand. Hari became still for a moment, found the edge of the mattress, and finally slipped the notes under it. The next morning, Anil had already prepared the tea. Anil also extended a 50 rupee note to Hari. Hari thought he had been caught. Then suddenly, Anil expounded that he had made some money the day before. He also said that he would be paying him regularly. Hari was really happy, but when he took the note in his hand, he saw that it was still wet from his last night. He also told him that he would teach him how to write complete sentences. Hari realized that Anil had come to know that he had stolen the money and had duly kept it back. But it was Anil's gratefulness that he did not let it reflect on his face or his words. Hari smiled at Anil again in his most appealing way, and Anil's smile also came to his face without any effort. Well, now some new words that you have encountered in the text. Fits and starts, which means not working on something consistently. Then you have queer, which means strange or odd. Then we have tuck, which means push or fold or turn, perhaps the edges or ends of something, especially a garment or bedclothes. Next, we have line of work, which means the principal activity in one's life that he does to earn money. Well, then we have beam, which means a ray or shaft of light. Crept, which means moved slowly and carefully in order to avoid being heard or noticed. Drew, which means pulled or dragged. Then you have sighed, which means a deep, long, audible breath expressing sadness, relief, or tiredness. Startled, which means shocked. Then you have dashed, which means ran quickly towards something. Then you have deserted, which means empty of people. Next word is drizzle, which means light rainfall, and damp, meaning slightly wet. Well, that's all in this video. I hope you have understood the story and also enjoyed it. For more videos, don't forget to subscribe the channel RRP Tutorials and don't forget to ring the notification bell. Thank you for watching.